George Mitchell is trapped in a flood during Hurricane Katrina.
I thought it was going to be a routine storm.
Only his dog Frisky can save him from drowning.
Frisky actually saved my life.
The city of Biloxi, Mississippi, some 90 miles from New Orleans, has been war veteran George Mitchell's home for all of his life. 14 years ago, he rescued a stray dog called Frisky.
He was the best thing happened to me in my lifetime as far as having a pet.
And wherever George went, his faithful friend Frisky was always by his side.
He was so funny. He really was. He had a personality like I never saw. He really had it's funny, a sense of humor. You could almost see the smile on his face, especially if he did something that he thought that I didn't want him to do, and he got away with it. So he kind of looked like he was enjoying that.
The relationship between man and dog is a close bond, where the two care for each other, they look out for each other, and they're successful together.
George and Frisky's remarkable friendship started when stray dog Frisky turned up on his doorstep.
He just showed up. My wife looked out one night and she said to me, "You see that little dog out there? You go outside and you get him, you bring him in, you give him a bath, and he's your dog. Do you understand?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "I've been thinking about that." And my wife, she died 9 years before the storm. She's the one that gave him the name Frisky. I just never had that association or that bond as much as I had with him.
This special bond will soon be put to the ultimate test. Tropical storm Katrina is forming in the Atlantic. In just 6 days, it will become one of the most devastating natural disasters in American history.
I've probably seen in Biloxi 10 or 11 storms.
But where George lives makes him especially at risk to flooding. His home sits on the edge of an inland bay that connects to the sea. As they play in the garden, they've no idea just how bad the hurricane is going to be.
Just thought it was going to be a routine storm with wind and some water, but nothing like it was.
As Katrina hits Florida, the storm becomes a hurricane. 1 million lose power and 11 people are killed. But this is just the beginning. Next, Katrina heads across the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico and rapidly intensifies.
This is bad news. Be prepared to see a direct hit.
Katrina is just 3 days away from hitting Biloxi.
Category 3 storm.
Wind is as strong as the flooding is picking up.
Officials here have announced an evacuation for Hancock County.
In Biloxi, thousands evacuate their homes. But war veteran George decides to stay.
I didn't want to get on that road with all that traffic. I know what a mess it is, especially if you don't leave a couple of days before the storm gets in. And I didn't want to get caught up in that.
His one concession, he agrees to move from his wooden house close to the bay to his friend's bungalow on higher ground. As night falls, the eye of the hurricane is now about 200 miles south of Biloxi. George's friend has packed away most of the furniture, so they settle down on an airbed. Outside, winds are starting to gust at over 30 miles per hour. In the Gulf of Mexico, the deep low pressure, a staggering 902 millibars on the barometer, combines with the high winds, causing a storm surge. Sea levels, some 30 feet higher than normal, are soon reported along the hurricane's path. As George sleeps soundly, Frisky is restless. Dogs have an acute sense of hearing. Are the sounds of the intensifying storm keeping him on edge? Come the early hours of the morning, a real-life nightmare is about to begin for George and Frisky. Winds gusting up to 50 miles per hour rip off the protective boarding nailed over the doors. The bungalow is now open to the elements.
Well, I looked in there, and sure enough, there was a board laying across in that bathroom, and it was indicating that the winds had really picked up.
Fueled by the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico, Katrina intensifies to a Category 5 hurricane, the worst it can be. A huge storm surge now starts to flood all coastal areas of Biloxi.
I saw this huge wall of water coming through the trees. And it was coming from the bay because the bay was right outside.
So then I knew it was getting pretty bad outside.
Finally, it hit you. And I realized I had made a mistake that I didn't leave.
Come on, Frisky. Come on, boy.
The bungalow is now surrounded by surging seawater.
The water started gushing in at the bottom of that door. It rose fast. It was like filling up a bathtub.
I got as many big towels as I could, trying to keep the water out. Then I saw it was a losing effort. Nature was just too strong outside.
I knew then that the water was going to be much worse than what I thought it was going to be. I kept moving furniture, smaller stuff onto the bigger stuff, because I just didn't believe it was going to get as high and as bad in here as it did.
Frisky was looking at the water as it was rising. I could see his little head. I know he was thinking, this is a lot more than I can handle here.
In minutes, the water rises to over ½ a meter.
He was starting to swim. That's how fast the water was starting to rise. He was getting pretty tired. He was 18 years old at that time.
Worried for his four-legged companion, George comes up with a plan.
I figured, well, we got a mattress in there. We got a chance, for him at least. I knew that mattress was going to float. I wasn't sure at first, see, but all of a sudden it was like answering a prayer. Here was something to really use.
Stay there, boy. Stay there. Move some of this junk out of the way. Stay there, boy. Stay there, boy.
He stayed right in the middle. I said, don't move, and he did. He's such an obedient little fella.
But the mattress is not strong enough for two. With temperatures around 26 degrees Celsius, he will be able to survive in the water for 12 hours before hypothermia sets in. But as the water rises, a mass of debris is moved around by the currents. Navy veteran dives underwater, desperate to find a way out.
I couldn't get out. It was locked in. So there was no place for me to go once that happened.
If water levels continue to rise, they will drown.
I didn't think I was going to make it, to be honest with you. I really did.
Year-old George Mitchell and his dog Frisky are trapped in a flood during Hurricane Katrina.
It looks like we're trapped, my friend. Just me and you.
If water levels continue to rise, they will drown.
I didn't think I was going to make it.
The eye of Hurricane Katrina is less than 6 hours away. Winds are now gusting up to 100 miles an hour and now battering the bungalow. George and Frisky have been trapped in their neighbor's flooded bungalow for over 3 hours.
Laying on that mattress, I was so exhausted. I was just plain exhausted. My legs, my arms, my fingers, you know, everything I had to use during that time, I was just wore out.
Instinctively, Frisky seems to know his master is in trouble.
I think he was watching my reactions. And then he walked over to the corner and kept looking at me. That's when he was starting to get the vibes that I was wearing down.
But it's not just staying afloat that they now have to worry about.
I figured, well, what I'm going to have to do is get the situation under control now, because I don't know what's coming through that door.
Frisky's barks alert George to some unwanted visitors. In low light, a dog's eyesight is 5 times better than ours. 2 of North America's most deadly snakes have been swept into the bungalow with the flood.
Well, that's what I worried about.
New water moccasins, or as we call them, cottonmouth, would be in this house.
I knew that they were trying to get to that mattress.
I hit one of them, and the other one disappeared, so apparently he followed him, and they went out. Well, I don't know, but I was much relieved when I didn't see him anymore.
As dawn breaks over Biloxi, Hurricane Katrina is close to making landfall. George has been treading water by Frisky's side for more than 6 hours.
We are on the outer edges of the storm, and we are dealing with some very strong gusts of wind.
Winds are now gusting at up to 160 miles per hour and pushing the storm surge ever higher. There's now less than 1/3 of a meter between George and the ceiling.
I was at peace. I really was at peace. It was a quietness that I never heard before in my life, even during the war.
I was thinking of, you know, what type of life I had led and how great my wife had been. You know, things, pretty pleasant things, really.
That's when I knew I was ready to let go.
But Frisky knows that all is not well with his friend and master of more than 17 years.
And all of a sudden, he'd lean over the edge of that mattress and he laid the kisses to me. He got right as close as he could, looking in my eyes.
It's the moment Frisky turns animal hero.
And then he started licking my face to say, come on, snap out of it. Let's get on the show on the road. We're gonna go through this.
It's as if Frisky knows that George is in danger of giving up. He keeps frantically licking George's face, as if willing him to live.
And I didn't want to leave him. I just didn't want to leave him. After he started kissing me and all around it. You know, I mean, that bond was too strong to abandon him. Just couldn't do it. So I fought it.
And when he saw my eyes kind of snap too, he backed up and wagged his little tail.
But Frisky never lets George give up. Every time George looks like he might let go, Frisky comes to his aid.
He really persisted.
His actions making the difference between life and death for George.
There are many cues that a dog might pick up on when somebody's in danger. There could be odor changes, there could be behavior changes. Things like face licking, we know, are well-recognized bonding behaviors that dogs show towards people. Because George's behavior got more quiet, Frisky was actually licking in order to stimulate George.
I'd have been gone. No doubt about it. I could have never lasted that long. He inspired me, and I know I inspired him. So it was one of these things. There's no greater love except a master and his dog.
By mid-morning, the hurricane passes through. But water levels still remain high.
Finally, I noticed the water was getting lowered down in the house. You know, you could tell that the tide was finally over and the water was running back out. And that was, of course, the biggest relief of the entire night.
George and Frisky's ordeal is over.
They got water. These people were chest high in water. In that
Frisky's vet, Lynn Sandifar, comes to look for George.
There was just unbelievable debris everywhere.
George's wooden house was completely destroyed. If he and Frisky had stayed that night, they would very likely have drowned.
He was very disoriented, and his feet were bloody. He didn't have any shoes on. Little Frisky was doing very well. He was quiet, but he was in a lot better shape than George was, actually.
George was taken to hospital, where he was treated for exposure and cuts to his feet. Frisky never left his side.
He was with me, and that was a big thing. To me, it was. I wasn't alone. I was with him. And he sure was good. God, he was good.
They're lucky to have survived. More than 1,800 people lost their lives. 2 years on from Katrina, as Biloxi and the Gulf Coast began to heal, Frisky passed away George pays his faithful companion a visit.
We're heading to Frisky's grave. This is the first time I've been able to come here. It's something I wanted to do, but wasn't able to. If tears could build a stairway and memories a lane, I'd walk right up to heaven and bring you home again.
Frisky was a brave little dog, and he loved George a great deal. He would have done anything he could to save George, just like George did to save him.
We were so close and so bonded. He was just special.
I think what Frisky did for George that night was a wonderful demonstration of how close the relationship can be between an owner and their dog. Frisky was totally unselfish in his behaviour, and that's quite remarkable.
Frisky actually saved my life. No doubt about it.